After the old man died, his caregiver rushed to the bank to collect the inheritance, but was taken aback by what the banker told her. "Hello, welcome, enjoy, subscribe and enable notifications." Mia was busy preparing soup, a simple stew made with the few ingredients she had managed to gather from the scattered bills she discovered throughout the house. Her mind, though uneasy, held on to the hope that she would soon be paid for the cleaning jobs she had done in the neighboring houses. She couldn't afford to despair. "They'll pay me soon. And with the food from the subsidy, we can eat better for a few days," she reminded herself. Meanwhile, in the small yard, bathed in the sun's warm rays, Mr. Harris was surrounded by his favorite plants. The elderly man, who had once been agile and energetic, now relied on a cane to move and spent the majority of his time sitting or reclining in some corner of the large but neglected house. Mia's life took an unexpected turn when she met Mr. Harris, which happened by chance. Mia, a young woman who had faced adversity since childhood, decided to leave her home to escape her mother's mistreatment. However, her decision, made in a moment of desperation and without any planning, left her completely alone on the dangerous city streets, with only a light backpack and a few bills in her pocket. In her aimless wandering, her gaze was drawn to an old house that seemed forgotten by time, with a dirty and faded sign advertising rooms for rent. The door, made of splintered and worn wood, was closed, and Mia hesitated, debating whether or not to knock, but her circumstances did not allow her to be picky. Any place with a bed would be a welcome retreat. Finally, with her heart racing, she summoned the courage to knock on the door, hoping that this time luck would be on her side. After a minute of absolute silence, Mia knocked harder, but the only response was the echo of her knocks. Time passed, and she continued to knock, her hope fading. The minutes seemed to drag on indefinitely, and she began to feel disappointed. "It's an old ad, more than I expected," she resignedly stated as she turned to leave. Suddenly, a sharp sound resembling the creak of a rusted lock broke the silence. Mia froze, a shiver running down her spine. The door slowly opened, revealing the figure of an unkempt-looking elderly man. His clothes were stained and wrinkled, and his beard was as long as his hair, implying he hadn't groomed in days. His wrinkled hands, covered in what appeared to be dried clay, clung to the door, as if they needed support. Fear began to nest in Mia's heart, but her need for a safe haven kept her firm. "Good evening, sir," she said in a trembling voice, trying to appear determined. "I saw your sign indicating that you rent rooms. Like to know if I can rent one tonight." The old man smiled with an unexpected joy, which seemed out of place given his appearance. "Sure," he responded enthusiastically. "Come in, dear, you are at home." Mia hesitated, but eventually decided to follow him. Every step inside the house filled her with increasing anxiety, as if something in the environment was warning her to flee at any moment. Despite its size, the house was shrouded in shadows, with only a few outdated lamps providing light. It was clear that it had been renovated, but it still had that majestic air of the past. "My name is Harris Villa," the elderly man said as they walked down a long, dark hallway. "I've lived in this house my entire life. It is a family inheritance. Now I'm renting rooms to make ends meet." Finally, they arrived at a large, dusty room that appeared to have been vacant for years. The furniture, while old, still has some charm. There was a single bed, an out-of-date television, and an antique dresser once owned by a young man. "This room belonged to my oldest son. I've tried to keep it clean, but the dust and humidity seem to win the battle," Mr. Harris said with resignation. "I'm old now, and it can be difficult for me to clean and keep the house in order. This house is too large for me." Mia considered her options, which were limited and unpromising. Her instinct was to leave, but the reality of her situation compelled her to stay. "For me, it's fine," she replied in a resigned tone. "At least the bed has sheets. How much are you charging for this night?" Mr. Harris paused for a moment, then shrugged and responded with a simplicity that moved Mia. "I do not know, my dear. Whatever you can offer me. I am a lonely man. I've been trying to rent these rooms for months, but people get annoyed whenever I set a price. Give me whatever comes from your heart." Mia couldn't help but smile and sigh at the old man's humility. She searched her backpack and handed him a few crumpled bills. I think I'll stay here for a few more nights until I get a job. That is fine. Mr. Harris nodded with a friendly smile. Oh well, but if you're looking for work, I have a position that might interest you. Mia looked at him in surprise, as if fate had dealt her a favorable hand. Getting a roof and a job offer on her first night away from home was more than she could have imagined. Mr. Harris continued, As you can see, I'm a lonely old man in a house too big. My eyes don't see well anymore, and I can hardly move without my cane. I quote, We've been asking my children for months to hire a nurse to take care of me, but they don't listen. All they do is send me money now and then when they remember. How about you work for me? Proposed Mr. Harris with a slight smile. All you have to do is clean the house a bit and cook. I'm sure a young and healthy girl like you can do it without problems. I would pay you. Although I must admit I can't offer much. Mia tried to contain the wave of joy that flooded her, but she couldn't help but accept immediately. It was exactly what she used to do at home. But now, for the first time, she would receive financial compensation for it. However, living together was not easy from the start. Mia, faced with the magnitude of the house, didn't know exactly where to start cleaning. Finally, she decided to start with the kitchen, the place where they would spend most of the time opening the doors and drawers. She discovered an overwhelming amount of pots, plates, jugs, and cutlery that were no longer useful, along with plastic containers of butter and yogurt, all covered in grime and turned into shelters for insects. The refrigerator was no different, full of decomposing food and completely dirty, determined to restore the kitchen's functionality. Mia began to dispose of everything she considered useless, filling large black bags with those objects. Mr. Harris's shout echoed in the house when he saw what Mia was doing. No! What are you doing, girl? Everything here is useful, Mr. Harris. This kitchen is uninhabitable. I have to clean it to cook without fear of catching something. Mia replied, determined to maintain her stance. The fights were not limited to the kitchen. There were many other areas in the house that needed attention, and on each occasion, Mr. Harris and Mia got into heated arguments. Nonetheless, despite the frequent disputes and shouting, the old man never crossed the line of serious disrespect, nor threatened violence. That marked a significant difference for Mia, as it was not what she was used to at home. At home, words had always been harsh, full of reproaches and criticisms. But Mr. Harris, despite his stubbornness and the conflicts that arose between them, never insulted or threatened her. That contrast awakened in Mia a mixture of relief and sadness. As the days passed, Mia began to notice other aspects of life in that house that deeply moved her. During the entire first week she lived there. There wasn't a single call for Mr. Harris's children, not even a message or a letter. However, every time she tried to get rid of some old belonging, the old man firmly prevented it. No, Mia, don't throw that away. Maybe my son will need it at some point and come looking for it, he said with a mix of hope and desperation. Mia, seeing the sadness in the old man's eyes, simply kept silent and put the objects in a box in the most orderly way possible. While doing so, she couldn't help but wonder why those supposedly beloved children didn't dedicate even 10 minutes to call their father, who clearly missed them deeply. But what puzzled her even more was that Mr. Harris didn't call them either. Finally, one day, Mia gathered the courage to ask him why he didn't communicate with them. Mr. Harris's response was laden with sadness and resignation. I think it's better to wait for them to call me. They're very busy, you know, and maybe it's not a good idea to bother them with my call. I see, Mia replied, feeling a lump in her throat. And do you have grandchildren? Well, of course, said Mr. Harris with a momentary spark of joy in his eyes, but I haven't seen them in a long time. They must be very big by now. The problem is that my children each live in different cities, and it's very complicated for them to come visit me. And for me, the mere idea of getting on a bus overwhelms me. That quote how things were in that house. Mia decided not to continue probing into the old man's feelings. She didn't want to awaken more sadness in his heart after a month of work. Mia received her first salary, although the amount was not considerable. For her, it meant much more than any other sum she had seen before. She didn't have great ambitions, and despite her months being consumed in long hours of cleaning and organizing, the satisfaction of her newfound independence drove her to stay. She decided to continue working for the kind old man until she found a better job. Every afternoon, Mia accompanied Mr. Harris to the senior center, a place where the elderly spent time watching TV, playing cards, and sharing stories. However, Mia noticed something that deeply troubled her. Mr. Harris was frequently avoided by the others. The other elderly barely exchanged words with him, and it seemed they avoided him, thinking that his unkempt appearance might be the reason Mia made a bold decision. One Saturday morning after breakfast, Mia stood in front of Mr. Harris with scissors in hand with a determination that admitted no objections. "Mr. Harris, it's time for a change. Go wash up while I prepare everything to shave and cut your hair. Moreover, I'll put a load of your clothes in the washing machine. I think it's been quite a while since you wore clean clothes. The old man tried to protest, but it was useless. Mia's determination was unwavering while she cut his hair and beard. She was surprised by what she found beneath all that disordered beard and tangled hair, a face that, although very old, still retained an unbreakable dignity. That afternoon, Mr. Harris seemed like a completely transformed person, with short hair, a clean-shaven face, and dressed in freshly washed clothes. Many of the seniors at the center didn't recognize him at first. They approached with curiosity, trying to identify the man who suddenly seemed so different. Some couldn't hide their surprise when he, with a shy but satisfied smile, revealed his true identity. "Mr. Harris, you look like another person." What prompted this radical change? "Well, I owe it all to my new friend," Mr. Harris replied, showing a mix of gratitude and pride. "She has cleaned my house from top to bottom, put everything in order, and helps me daily with the food. I don't know what I would do without her." The comments quickly circulated among the seniors. Some began to murmur among themselves, wondering if that girl could be his granddaughter or perhaps something closer. However, Mr. Harris laughed softly, clarifying with humor that Mia was nothing more than the daughter of a friend who had come to spend a few days in the city and luckily had decided to help him in his house. That same afternoon, several seniors approached Mia, hoping she could also offer her help in cleaning their homes. The young woman, surprised by the unexpected demand, was delighted at the prospect of increasing her income by doing something that was quite simple for her. Mia soon found herself working in 3 different houses, and her income increased significantly more than she had expected. If she had wanted, she could have easily rented her own place and relocated. But she had already grown accustomed to Mr. Harris's warm company and sense of belonging, which she had never experienced before. One day, as the sun was just rising, Mr. Harris made an unexpected request. "Mia, if you do not have to work at the other houses today, could you please accompany me somewhere? Bring the shopping cart and large cloth bag." The request seemed strange to Mia. It appeared that they were about to do a large market. However, she had already purchased all of the necessary groceries for the week. "What's happening?" she thought to herself, as the bus ride seemed endless. Despite the long journey, Mia relished the opportunity to explore parts of the city she was unfamiliar with. Finally, after a long journey, they arrived at what appeared to be a government building. They walked into an office full of other seniors who were accompanied by younger people. Mia watched with curiosity, one by one. The seniors went inside and emerged with bags full of groceries. "What is this, Mr. Harris? Why are they feeding us?" Mia expressed surprise. Mr. Harris smiled and apologized for not mentioning it earlier. "It's just that I am a retired teacher, and the government sends me a box of groceries every 2 months. It does not always include the same things, but it is a valuable resource for lonely people like me." That revelation left the young woman speechless, her mind filled with questions. What were you teaching? What did you do when you were younger? Mr. Harris, wearing a nostalgic expression, began to tell his story. "I studied art and painting, a very beautiful but not noble profession in terms of the economy. I painted paintings and murals on commission in the homes of wealthy individuals. But when that wasn't enough to make ends meet, I began teaching at the same school where I had previously studied. It appears that many of us end up in the classroom, teaching what once fascinated us." Mia couldn't stop marveling at Mr. Harris's rich and complex life. Each new story he told about painters and art deepened her admiration for the old man. For several months, life went on relatively smoothly. Mr. Harris paid me on time at the end of each month and frequently left her a generous tip, making her smile with gratitude. However, as with all good things, financial stability came to an end. Mr. Harris eventually realized he couldn't keep paying her, and it was extremely painful for the old man to admit that reality to the young woman who had helped him so much. "My dear Mia, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but I don't have any money. My children stopped sending me remittances long ago, before you arrived, but I was hoping that they'd send me something else soon. I am sorry to have to ask you to leave." "I can't keep paying you," said Mr. Harris, tears streaming down his wrinkled cheeks. Mia, attempting to conceal her surprise and concern, took the old man's trembling hands and gently squeezed them. "Mr. Harris, do not worry about the money. I can continue to care for you and the house without receiving any compensation. I will find a way to earn more money," she responded, attempting to soothe the sadness she saw in Mr. Harris's eyes. However, Mia was also struggling with house cleaning. The money was running out quickly, and the few houses where she offered her services expressed no interest in hiring them. The days passed slowly, and the financial pressure began to weigh on her. Mia was in the kitchen on a sunny Saturday, trying to relax while cooking. Her mind was racing with ideas for how to offer her services elsewhere and how to make the most of the government's food budget. When she finally went out to the yard with the food tray, she noticed Mr. Harris sitting in his garden chair, seemingly asleep in the warm sun. She approached him with a smile, hoping to gently wake him up, but he did not respond. She tried again, more urgently calling him by name, but it was ineffective. A terrible thought entered her mind, and fear gripped her with a heavy heart. She confirmed what she had feared most. Mr. Harris died in the middle of his beloved garden, surrounded by the plants he had nurtured for so many years. What followed was a lengthy and agonizing process. Mia was detained by police and spent several days at the station while the cause of the old man's death was investigated. The interrogations were harsh and stressful, but the authorities ultimately concluded that Mia had nothing to do with Mr. Harris's death. The police informed me that they attempted to contact Mr. Harris's children, but they expressed little interest in their father's death, only inquiring about the inheritance in the house. Papers depicting a coldness that broke Mia's heart. However, before his death, Mr. Harris left a cassette tape with her name on it with caution. The police sat with her and listened to the old man's final message. "Mia, I'm so sorry I couldn't pay you." Mr. Harris spoke in a trembling but warm tone. "In recent months, I know an old man's apologies aren't worth much, and I'm not sure when you'll receive this message. But I want you to know that when I die, I will repay you what I owe. The funds will be automatically transferred to your account. I've discussed everything with my lawyer." After finishing listening to the message, Mia was unable to hold back her tears. The death of Mr. Harris, the first person to show her genuine and selfless affection, caused her great sadness. After a few moments of despair, she tried to keep her cool. When the police let her go, Mia dashed to the nearest bank. She really needed the money. While waiting in line, the old man made a final gesture of affection and responsibility, in addition to meeting an urgent financial need. Mia wiped her tears and thought about her future. She knew she'd soon have to find another place to live, because Mr. Harris's heartless children had most likely already started the house succession proceedings. When it was her turn, Mia cleared her throat, handed over her wallet, and spoke in a choked tone. "I'd like to withdraw all of the money in my account." The young cashier began processing the transaction on the small computer, but his expression quickly changed. His gaze remained fixed on the screen for a few seconds before he looked up to tell her, surprised and concerned. "Miss, I'm sorry, but I believe you'll need to speak with the manager." The young man explained the situation to his boss, and they both reviewed the data displayed by the system together. A few seconds later, the manager stood up from his chair and addressed Mia with a serious but calm expression. "Miss, I apologize for the inconvenience, but we cannot accommodate your request." Mia lowered her head, embarrassed and disappointed, her mind racing. How foolish I was. How could he have money to pay me when he told me a month ago that he didn't have any more? This is what happens when you believe the word of an old man who is in ruins. The truth was, she had counted on that money. Mr. Harris had informed her that he would transfer her payment as soon as he collected a pending debt. She murmured a brief thank you and was about to leave when the assistant gently interrupted her. "Miss, it appears that you have not understood what we are trying to say. There is money in your account. The issue is that it's too much." Mia looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean by too much?" The manager confirmed with a small smile. "Too much for a single withdrawal. Please check it yourself." With her heart pounding fast. Mia approached the screen, terrified of what she might see. There, in seemingly unreal numbers, was the largest figure she had ever seen in her life. The manager, sensing her surprise, continued quietly. "Apparently, a massive transfer was made from an insurance company. Perhaps a relative of yours died. Magisterium Insurance Company transferred the funds to you as Harris de la Guardia's sole heir and responsible party, as stated clearly here. Do you know anything about it?" She could only nod weakly, stunned and unable to express herself. Before tears streamed down her cheeks, Mia couldn't believe the blessing that the old man, who had been more than just her employer, but also a loving grandfather to her, had left her in the comfort of an elegant hotel room. That afternoon, Mia realized the cassette had a message on the other side and was eager to listen. She went down to reception in search of a radio, but she was disappointed to learn that they did not have any. This was not surprising, given Mr. Harris's lack of technological sophistication. Determined to hear the entire message, Mia went to an antique shop and, after a brief search, discovered an old radio that could play the cassette while her heart was racing. She settled into a chair, inserted the cassette, and pressed play. Mr. Harris's trembling voice filled the room again. "Oh dear, I apologize for recording this. Like this." The tears got the best of me. "The last thing I wanted to tell you was that I was saving the money for my children. But after living with you for a few months, I wondered if it was really worth it. You've been like a daughter to me, and I believe you've done everything from the heart and with genuine love. I just want you to know that your presence with me has brought me indescribable joy. You not only repaired my old house, but you also brought me joy in my final days. I bless you and hope that God will accompany you on your journey wherever you go." Mia's eyes welled up again, this time with tears of gratitude and love. Mr. Harris's final message brought her peace and renewed purpose. Months later, Mia, armed with the strength that only determination and love for a loved one can provide, was able to buy her former employer's old house. It was not a simple task. The affectionate old man's children fought like vultures over the inheritance. However, Mia eventually triumphed and was able to transfer ownership of the house to her name. With heartfelt gratitude and a strong desire to honor Mr. Harris's memory, she decided to completely renovate the house, which had previously been a place of solitude for a forgotten old man, into a home full of life and hope. Mia converted it into a nursing home for elderly people who had been abandoned by their families, providing a safe and loving environment for them. In honor of the one who had given her so much, she lovingly named it after Mr. Harris, ensuring that his kindness and generosity would live on forever. The story of Mia and Mr. Harris teaches us the importance of kindness and the profound impact our actions can have on others' lives. Mia, through her dedication and genuine love, not only found refuge in Mr. Harris's home, but also became the person who brought joy and comfort to the old man in his final days. Mr. Harris's decision to leave his inheritance to Mia, despite initially reserving it for his children, exemplifies the importance of valuing those who support us not because of blood ties, but because of the genuineness of their affection. The story reminds us that true wealth is not found in money, but in genuine relationships and the love we give and receive. Thank you for joining us on this courageous and transformative journey.